Hi y'all, bebe here. I just want to declare that tonight I've been watching two movies on Tubi, and now I'm going to watch a third, and they all seem to follow the same theme. I'm the teacher or principal who's going to turn the school around. The first one was a chess movie. I like watching those, when it's like biopic movies of the teacher who turns the school around, but instead it's the athletic coach, the sports team coach. I like chess, and I like basketball. I've seen a few of the volleyball ones. Maybe. They're okay. But chess, track, basketball, those are the ones I will watch. Even the cheerleader ones sometimes, if it's more about the coach, like even that terrible Lifetime, but I'm a cheerleader pact scandal. That movie was kind of silly, but it's a good rewatch. So anyways, I watched the first movie tonight, was called Critical Thinking. 2002, John Leguizamo. I'm going to pause the current one. 2002 was John Leguizamo in Critical Thinking. I couldn't really tell you who any of the other actors were. I didn't really recognize them. It was very much not a New York City, but Miami. An interesting thing. It was set in a high school called Jackson High School, which I've actually gone past before when they showed it multiple times, the exterior outside of it. And I'm like, holy shit, that's a high school that we went past multiple times on foot when we were in Miami. 2-3 years ago, Jeff and I we took a cruise ship, and we spent like a day and a half in Miami. Just taking the buses and public transit and walking, and we went past this high school maybe about a mile from the Target in downtown Miami. And it was called Jackson High School, and it had this really nice exterior to it, and it was in this movie. Maybe it was the exterior, maybe it wasn't the interior, but it was a good movie. So yeah, chess coach, teacher turns the non-existent chess team into a chess team. Basically, it was an elective class, and the school principal frowned upon the idea that chess could even be an elective. And then the school principal was like, there's no funding for chess. And then the school principal would also be like, blah, 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 knock, knock. I'm going to put this kid in your classroom now because I'm going to treat your class like it's detention. Just, treating John Leguizamo's teacher character as if his classroom was a dumping ground, a behavioral dumping ground for, miscreant students who, needed to be in detention instead of their first period class. And of course, like all teacher movies, you never see any of their other class periods. You never see their lesson planning. You never see their prep. You never see them on lunch. And you never see the teacher having a life outside of this chess. Outside of their teaching. Outside of their one class. It doesn't work like that, people. In real high schools, teachers teach multiple classes a day, not just the one class of 4 to 20 kids, and then, for majority of the scenes, it's like the same 8 kids no matter what, and then sometimes it's even less. It's like the same 6 kids no matter what. And in this movie, it was that. It was like the same 6 teenagers who got the supporting roles as the main students, and then, like, the other teenagers were just there in the background to fill a seat, to make it look real. And it was a good movie, okay? Mind you, I like the one with Ted Danson, the Kings of New York, Kings of the Bronx, whatever. That was a good movie. That was around the same era. But this was the high school level of chess, and it was a team of 4, and then it became a team of 5, and then it became a team of 6. But it was still a good movie. Okay, the second movie I just watched was called Shackled. And the only actor I can name from it was D.L. Hewley, who has just been in, like, random athletic and thriller and a lot of black cinema movies. I've seen him in probably a few random spots on Law and Order in the past, and maybe at some other crime shows, and he might have been on New York Undercover for a few episodes. He's been on some crime shows. D.L. Hewley. I mean, he even kind of looked like the guy who was under the bed and Don't Look Under the Bed, but then I looked it up on IMDb and it's like, oh no, never mind, wrong guy. But, it was like D.L. Hewley plays this teacher guy who had a crappy teaching past and an untold story until the end of the movie. And he went in to be a teacher in a teenage boys' prison, jail, corrections facility in New York City. At some place called Shackleton or Shackle. And he was beat up by some of the corrections officers, and then the warden or the chief guy of the facility was like, "Who beat you up?" "Well, I didn't send any of them to do that to you." "Well, I don't think they did that to you. No one's come forward. They obviously didn't do it to you. Are you sure it wasn't some of the wild criminal teenage thug boys?" "No, it was during the lockdown when the only people in this hallway were corrections officers." And he's like, "Well, I guess if you're insistent, then you know where my office is. Come and file a complaint. I can't guarantee you anything will be done about it." And you know why he was beat up by the corrections officers? I'll tell you why. Because there is this idea that teenage boys who commit felonies and commit violent crimes aren't worthy of an education. They aren't worthy of getting school, of having schoolwork, of having lessons, of having assignments, of doing homework, of doing their schoolwork for anything. I thought that was kind of weird. And I kind of get it, but I kind of don't get it. And then it showed multiple scenes, a handful of times, outside the prison, just random people being paid to be random voiceless extras holding up protest signs that literally say, and if you paused it during the right frame, during the 3 different times the protesters were in that scene, "No books for crooks. No school for fools. No teaching the criminals." It was a literal grown-ass adults protesting in circles outside of a youth corrections facility. "We don't want school for criminal teenagers. We don't want criminal teenagers to have access to books or education or get their high school diplomas." It was one of those movies. It was one of those movies where the odds were stacked against the kids or teens, or honestly, most of the actors look like grown-ass adults playing supposedly 13 to 19-year-olds, but well, some of them look like they were nearly 35 years old, even 40. It was a weird movie. And at the end, you were rooting for the good guy, and you were even rooting for 2 of the thug teens whose, violent histories contradicted the idea that they were worthy of receiving an education because they'll probably never be able to be let out into the mainstream world. But it was just one of those movies where you're rooting for everyone, mostly everyone, except the ones who are definitely showing, "I'm resistant to all things education and I'm just gonna fool around, goof off, and commit more crimes while in youth prison." Not fabulous. It was an okay movie. It had this, narration by some guy who looked like he was homeless. He was doing, spoken word prose on a street corner. And every now and then, the cameras would go back to him, and it would be like a split screen, and some of the editing would be split screen. Montage of D.L. Hewley doing the teaching and his life, both inside and outside of the prison, or or in his home life. And then, life of the teenage boys in the prison. And then there would be a third panel in the screen showing the homeless guy on the street corner doing this narration of prose to narrate the story of the movie, the theme, all through like competitive spoken word. And there was supposed to be a poetry slam in this movie, and there were. But then, let me tell you this, chaos ensued. And it was chaotic. And then the board of directors was like, no, these criminal teenagers can't go to the poetry slam. They're not allowed to leave the prison. So then D.L. Hewley's character was like, well, let's do it here at the prison. Let's invite the other schools to come to here to the prison. And, you know, that was near the end of the movie, and it didn't turn out very well, and somebody died. And there was one teenager who was an actual teenager in this movie. And he looked familiar, and I'm like, is that Twitch from Holes? It wasn't Twitch from Holes. It was instead the guy who voiced Johnny Lovely in The Proud Family. And he was in a handful of other very low-budget films and some acting gigs, and even a TV show called Greetings from Tucson from the WB and UPN back in the early 2000s. And unfortunately, he died not long after that movie was made. But his name was Pablo Santos, and I'm like, where have I seen this actor kid? He looked so much like Twitch from Holes, but he just had that look like, what is he doing in prison? Maybe he did something, but obviously he's the lone man out. And he didn't really participate in criminal activity in the prison. He didn't participate in blending in. He just kind of stood off to the side and looked really small. He made himself small. But at the end of the movie, he was the one with the shiv, the shank. And he, during the chaos of a melee, he had the shank in his hand, and he turned around and he moved his arm forward to the person running at him during the melee, and he was charged with first degree. But in my mind, he didn't really have a moment to think of what he was doing before he was gonna do it. He had the shank in his hand, but he didn't know who he was gonna kill. He was just trying to protect himself during a melee in a youth detention prison. During a melee of chaos, violence, and pandemonium when corrections officers were being beaten and pummeled to death by gangbanging teenage thugs played mostly by adults. It was all for the movie, but it was very authentic. And then you have the quiet Puerto Rican kid, kind of a late bloomer, being small and quiet and really mousy for the entire movie. And then at the end, he's the one who kills the martyr of the movie with a shank. And he didn't even have the shank to begin with. It was on the floor and it landed near him during the chaos and pandemonium, and he just grabbed it to fend for himself because he didn't want to die. It's a damn shame. Oh well. And now I'm going to watch a movie. A third movie about, teacher biopic. No. TV. What am I watching? I'm not watching Ronald Reagan. Hell no. No offense to Reagan, but I'm not watching that. No. I'm not watching Downton Abbey. Oh, it's called 187. It was a movie from 1997. And I can't, I don't even know who's in it. But it was a thriller drama from then. use my iPad. Movie 187. Oh, it's a 2-hour long movie. And it has Samuel L. Jackson, John Hurd, Method Man, and Sidney Poitier. Okay. Looks like he plays himself. Okay, Samuel L. Jackson and John Hurd. John Hurd, as in Mr. McAllister from Home Alone, and Samuel L. Jackson, well, you know, he's genius. And then Method Man is in it. And then Sidney Poitier, but it doesn't say his character name, so I'm guessing he's just kind of there in the background as, like, credited but not credited. Maybe he doesn't have any lines. Maybe he's just there. Who knows? That's interesting. Okay, well, that's it. It's a Warner Brothers movie called 187. And then the other 2 movies I watched were Critical Thinking and Shackle. And maybe I'll watch another movie after this, another teacher movie. All right, talk to y'all later. Bye.